Hi there, I'm Susan Beyer, and this is Fun with Research. Thanks for joining me today. I want to talk a little bit about sample balancing today. This may be something that you've heard about. It might be called sample balancing, sample weighting, and a lot of people don't really understand why you would do that or how that works, or maybe when you shouldn't do it. So sample balancing or weighting is what happens when you're trying to get a representative profile of, for example, a geographic area. And you adjust your sample so that you get that representative profile. So let's say you're doing a study in North Carolina and South Carolina, and you want them to have about 50-50 representation in your sample. There's a few things you're going to do. The first is you're going to try to get that organically in terms of how you are targeting invitations to your survey, or how you're organizing your panel respondent profile or whatever. You could put quotas in so that you don't get too many of one group, etc. So the best way to do it is just organically if you can. You might not always have that option. For example, you may be looking to get a better understanding of your customers between those two states, and for whatever reason the response rate in South Carolina is much lower than the response rate in North Carolina, so you end up with a lot fewer South Carolina respondents, and you know that your customer base is more 50-50 and you want your data to represent that. Okay, so you have your data and now you need to make some adjustments to it. There's a couple things that you can do. If you have a lot of folks in North Carolina and a good set in South Carolina but substantially less, you can select a subset of your people from North Carolina that are representative, that match the number of people you have in South Carolina. Ta-da, you've got a balance. But if your South Carolina numbers are really low, then that's not going to help you, because if you've only got 50 respondents from South Carolina, you're not going to want to take your 400 from North Carolina and only choose 50 of them and have only 100 respondents. That doesn't give you very good statistical reliability. So in that case, what you may need to do is sort of bump up your representation of the responses that you got from South Carolina. And that's what happens with weighting. Each respondent in the survey sort of normally is good for one response. Makes sense? But when you're weighting, you might make one group's respondents, you might make their responses count only 0.75 of a response, and you may make another group count 1.5 of a response, so that overall you get a total number of responses that's what you want, because you're balancing some down and some up. So you're using all of the responses, but you're giving them a different weight depending on sort of what your total population wants to look like. And that is fine under responsible circumstances. What you don't want to do is take 5 people from South Carolina and weight them so that they are represented as 500 people. That's, that data isn't any more statistically significant than it was with 5 people, just because you've multiplied it by 100 times. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that your weighting is responsible and isn't really disproportionately skewing and giving maybe people a false sense of security in terms of the confidence of their data. The other thing that some people wonder about is, okay, I'm trying to get a bunch of these markets, and I want to look at each market individually, and I only got 10 respondents in that market, so let's weight those so that it looks like we got 100. The problem with that is it doesn't tell you any more in that given market than you would have had with 10. In fact, it's actually sort of lulling you into a false sense of security, because somebody may look at that and say, oh, they got 100 respondents there, when in fact you only got 10, and you're just bumping those responses up. So in a situation like that, just making a representative group bigger isn't really the point of weighting. Weighting is about achieving a balance between different things. So if you really want to look at that North Carolina, South Carolina thing, and you know that your customer base is 50-50, you want to represent 50-50 responsibly in your data set. But that doesn't mean that the data you have from South Carolina is any more reliable just because you multiplied them all and made them worth 10 or 100 people per response. So a responsible researcher will be able to help you if you need to do some balancing on your sample size. But that's what it is. That's what they're talking about if you hear about weighting or sample balancing. I hope that's helpful to you. If you have any questions, you can always reach me, Susan at audienceaudit.com. We'll see you next week on Fun with Research. Thanks.